fine. You might want to stop the recording and then have it start recording Weinstein, who's going to speak in a minute, who's chair of the Voter Services Committee, who's put together this program. So thank you, Laura. Thank you, panelists. Thank you, everybody, for being here. One other thing, you can put your questions in the chat, and we will address them either at the end or as we go along. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Sandra. I really appreciate that welcome and introduction. So my name is Laura Weinstein. I'm the chair of the Voter Services Committee for the League of Women Voters of Louisville and Kentucky. And I'm so pleased you're joining us tonight because starting this year, there are going to be really big changes to how we vote in Jefferson County for the Metro Council and mayor's races. These elections will be nonpartisan, which means that the candidates will not have party labels next to their names on the ballots. So this panel was created in order to educate voters about what they need to know to be prepared for these changes. The League of Women Voters is honored to invite 3 panelists who are experts on this transition to nonpartisan elections. So first we have David Yates, who was sworn in as the Jefferson County Clerk in October 2025. David began his legal career as a law clerk for the U.S. District Judge William Bertelsmann and later worked at the Commonwealth Attorney's Office. He then served as the Assistant Attorney General of Kentucky before becoming an attorney for the UAW. He has previously served as a Metro Council member, as the Metro Council President, and a state senator. We're also very pleased to welcome Maryellen Allen, who is the co-director of the Jefferson County Elections Center. She began her legal career with law at Wyatt, Tarrant & Combs, and then later served as an assistant attorney general in the Kentucky Attorney General's office, primarily representing state agencies, including the Secretary of State's office and the State Board of Elections. Ms. Allen served as a general counsel to the Secretary of State, John Y. Brown III, and director of the State Board of Elections. And we also are so pleased to welcome Dan Wu, who is the Vice Mayor of Lexington and an at-large Lexington Council member. He's a former board member of LexArts, the Human Rights Commission, Local First Lexington, Kentucky Equal Justice Center, and Civic Lex. Dan has been very active in the community, working on issues ranging from food insecurity to immigrant and refugee rights. He created both the I Am a Kentuckian and Immigrants and Refugees Belong Here campaign. And we're so happy to welcome him because Lexington has had nonpartisan elections for quite some time. And so his perspective will be invaluable in educating voters about what to expect. So I think we'll start off with just a general question for our panelists. What exactly is changing about local elections in Jefferson County, and when is it going into effect?
Well, if you'd like, I can lead off with that since I was actually in the state legislature when we changed it in 2024. The laws have changed. So right now, this will be the first time in our history of metro government and Louisville metro government that will have nonpartisan races. And so what does nonpartisan really mean? It means there won't be a party affiliation next to the name. In actual, what it will mean for many voters is you'll have about 75,000 independent voters in Metro Louisville that will be able to participate in the primary process for the first time. Ordinarily, in a primary, it'll be partisan. So registered Democrats will vote in a Democratic primary. Registered Republicans will vote in a Republican primary. And that's the way it is for constitutional offices like county clerk and PVA and county attorney, sheriff. But this year, they had made that change in law. So for the mayor and the Metro Council, which was actually created by statute 67C, they were able to make sure and change it. So for the first time, you won't just pick a Democrat or Republican, you pick the candidate that you choose best. There will not be a party affiliation next to their name. And then, so in the event that there's more than 2 candidates, so like in the mayor's race, for instance, this year, there's 11 candidates on there. So you don't pick a Democrat primary or Republican primary. It's an open primary because it's nonpartisan. The top 2 vote getters move on to November. The same thing with each of the Metro Council races. Now they're nonpartisan. So in the event there's more than 2 candidates, so if there's 3 or more candidates, again, it's the top 2 vote getters move on to November, the general election. There are some races where there's only 2 candidates, and at that point, they wouldn't be on your primary election. So the difference this year is going to be hopefully participation. We're going to have a lot of people who have been held out of primaries because if you aren't registered Democrat or Republican, you can't participate in the primaries. But with nonpartisan ballots, really similar to judicial ballots. So like judges are nonpartisan, you got to make sure you fill in that bubble. For a lot of years in Louisville, they relied a lot of people do straight party ballot. If you do that, your votes will not be counted on the nonpartisan races, just like the judges. So you have to take your time and fill in each of those bubble. And the other part is you're going to have to do your research. You're going to have to know who the candidates are. And I think some of that's a good thing.
Great, thank you so much. And Maryellen, would you like to add anything to that?
Just that I saw there was a question in the chat. Do we have any other nonpartisan races? Jefferson County has about 89 small cities. Most of them are nonpartisan. Most of them also waive the primary. The one exception is Shively. They still run partisan in city races.
Okay, will there be any nonpartisan judicial races on the ballot as well?
Not this election
Okay.
in Jefferson County. Either because they're not up or we don't have any vacancies in office.
Yeah, they take turns.
Great. Okay, so what does nonpartisan voting really mean in practice for voters?
I think I touched just a little bit on practice is there's no longer the crutch of just picking partisan straight party ballot. And honestly, if you look at it, anybody can pick an R or D behind your name and register like that way. So you actually have to figure out who the candidate is. And so in real effect, it's a lot of individual candidates, especially at the local level. On Metro Council, right now you've seen they still have two different caucuses. They still have a Republican caucus and Democrat caucus. They separate out, but in the election for the voters, they're going to have to rely on what they know about the individual candidate. The same thing with the mayor's race. The people are still registered Democrat or Republican, but everyone can participate in it. So it'll be the top vote getters. So for the mayor's race, for instance, you're going to have Democrats, Republicans, and independents all going in together to pick the top two. They're going to pick their candidate they like, and the top two vote getters will move on to November. So I think it should, and my hope is we're going to have a large turnout. A lot of times in our primaries, sometimes in Louisville, we'll have a 20% turnout. I'm hoping that it'll be much higher than that because of the engagement, and especially with things like this. To get the information out, we help make sure that voters know that their vote matters so much in the primary. A lot of times you can't sit back and wait for your party to make that decision for you.
Great. And I think Vice-Mayor Wu, it would be wonderful if we could get your insight into what nonpartisan voting really means in practice for the voters.
Sure. Thank you all for having me. Honestly, I'll start with this. If we had had partisan elections for council and mayor, I would not have run for office. Full stop. We've all seen kind of how toxic partisanship has been both at the state and national level in this country. And, there's so much about it that's wrong. At the very beginning, it just not being able to get things done. And then if you're in the minority party, you have no power whatsoever. So it becomes just a numbers game. For me here on Lexington City Council, our council races and our mayor's race have been nonpartisan for the past 50 years since we merged city and county government. Whoever made that decision, kudos to them. I think it was a wonderful decision. In practice, I'm in the fourth year of my first term. In practice, what that means is that we as council members have to talk to each other on every single issue. We don't caucus in any way. We don't take for granted that you're a Democrat, so you're always going to vote this way. You're a Republican, you're always going to vote this way. We don't think like that at all. And the other part of it too, in local government, the issues that we're dealing with are, I was going to say are not partisan, but should not be partisan, right? We're not talking about gun control. We're not talking about marriage equality. We're not talking about these sort of controversial culture war issues. We're talking about sanitary sewers. We're talking about housing and zoning. We're talking about repairing sidewalks and snow removal. All of those things, they should be and they are nonpartisan here. So I'm really happy to lead a council that is nonpartisan. It is a lot more work in some ways because we do have to continually talk to each other, negotiate with each other, kind of build coalitions issue by issue. So in practice, serving, I really, really love it. And in practice, in terms of elections and voting, I think more people are hopefully more engaged with finding out who we are as people, what our qualifications are, what our values are, et cetera, before making a decision instead of just clicking whatever party they're leaning towards.
Well, thank you.
Vice Mayor Wu, I was just going to tell you thank you for that perspective. I mean, to me, having served 10 years on the Metro Council here in Louisville, and the entire time it was partisan, and then being president of it was like herding cats, over there. There's 26 members on the Metro Council, and then going to the state Senate, which is extremely partisan. And I think that some of the best things that we could do on the local level was coming together as a community and shedding that partisan divide. You also see, unfortunately, a lot of people at local level want to play partisan politics and political games and mock that of the federal election, which is just horrible, to have here. So I think I appreciate that perspective because, right now in Louisville, this will be the first time. So we don't know what we're going to get or how that's going to turn out. They still do caucus separate here. And I'm not sure how that change will play out long term.
I'm kind of curious about that, David, if I can interject. Do you feel like their caucusing by party is sort of a transitional move, or do you feel like that's just a permanent way that they operate?
I think under the way it was created under 67C, the statute that created the merger and metro government, they laid out some rules of operation. And then when they met, and so they're actually, not only do they just caucus, there's actually caucus positions that were hired onto it. So, I don't know what will happen long term. This will be the first election. Let's get through here first, and of course I'll help however I can in my role as clerk now. But I do think that some of the ills that we see over the partisan politics, I think if we could do better at the local level, then that's a positive.
And Vice Mayor Wu, I do have a follow-up question too in regards to voters. So how do voters overcome the challenge of researching multiple candidates for multiple races? What have you found to be successful in Lexington?
Yeah, so in Lexington, we obviously have endorsements that come from the Lexington Herald Leader, and we have organizations such as yourself, League of Women Voters, Kentuckians for the Commonwealth. We have all the different labor unions. We have all the other sort of lobby groups and interest groups who will send out questionnaires to us. And then one of two things will happen. They'll either publish their answers and kind of let folks kind of make their own determinations based on, what our value sets are, what our policies are, or some of these organizations will make endorsements. So in 2022, for example, I was endorsed by CFAIR, some of the labor unions, the social workers union, things like that. So that is an expression to the voters of like where you stand on values and policies as well. But the other part is honestly just having to dig a little deeper, having to read the paper, having to do a little bit of research, go online, look at our campaign websites, things like that. I will say this other part too for me as a candidate, having nonpartisan races, I think, gives a better opportunity to new folks entering races and challengers, because then it really becomes a question of name recognition, right? So I can't rely, I'm a registered Democrat, but I can't just rely on other Democrats voting for me because there's a D next to my name. I have to go pound the pavement and knock on every door that I can and engage with people and say, hey, here's who I am, here's what I stand for, can I earn your vote? So I think it's a great opportunity for new people and for challengers.
Great. That's very, very helpful perspective. Okay. Well, and this goes to the whole group. What will the ballot look like for these races and how will it be different from the past?
I attempted to be able to share some screens, but I think there were some restrictions that wouldn't let me do that here. But just to make it easy, I printed a couple, and I could kind of old school hold it up there. But just a few ballots to look. I have a breakdown of just particular ones where if you're an independent voter, so if an independent voter, you're only going to have the nonpartisan on there. If you're an independent voter and one of the Metro Council districts that you live in or is up for election, you'll have the mayor's race and that on here. So I printed one that was just for the mayor's race.
Okay.
So pretty simple. And so you're going to have the names on one side.
Mm-hmm.
And then for a Democrat, for instance, you'll have it'll be really similar, except for in addition to the nonpartisan races, you're going to have the partisan races. So up front, you'll have the United States Senate race on there that you're the Democratic candidates. You'll have the county attorney race. You'll have your county clerk's race, and then the sheriff's race. And then on the next to it, you'll have your nonpartisan. So I'll show you another example. So, and then the same thing in the Republican ballot. You'll have your United States Senator candidates that they got quite a few on both sides, and then the same thing with your the third congressional in Congress, and then the state Senate as well. But example of this.
Yeah, County Clerk Yates, I've actually given you share permission, so if you do want to share your screen, you're able to do that. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, it's all right. We were trying earlier, and
Yeah.
I guess it was there for security. But and so what I wanted to do, and I can have Maryellen put that on there. I think that Sally can give it to her. But I just wanted you guys if you want to pull up a sample ballot at any time at my website at jeffersoncountyclerk.org. There's voter information. There's a drop down, and you can say, "Let me see my sample ballot right now." So you don't have to be surprised when it's in there. So you get a sample ballot. As we get closer to the elections, our poll provider ES&S will have that even updated even sooner. And so as we get closer, we don't want voter fatigue, but we'll get more and more information out there as well. But it's pretty simple. If you live in Jefferson County and you want to go ahead and look and see, you can look at all your voter information, make sure that you're registered to vote, make sure things are right, double check that ahead of time.
So the sample ballots are up there now, and I went and put in the chat our website. So you can type in your address and actually see your sample ballot. Now, because it's a primary, it'll just look you up by address, so you can pick the Democratic ballot, the Republican ballot, or the nonpartisan ballot.
Great. And this is another question to all the panelists, but how do you think this change in voting will impact voter behavior?
Our hope in learning from what we've seen in other counties, first thing I did is county clerk is start reaching out to other clerks in counties and what's been done where well. Obviously, we're a little bit different animal because of our size, but I'm hoping it increases engagement. I think that makes sense. Anytime we try something new, the first thing I do is I humble myself. I'll listen and I learn and figure out what works the best way. It's going to be education onto it, but making sure the process is easy. So simple things like be able to look at your ballot ahead of time, making sure that they know who their candidates are, and right now in this May primary, we're going to have more early voting locations than we've ever had in the history of Jefferson County. So we have 25 early voting locations around the city. And so what I want to do is just make voting as easy as possible for Jefferson County residents. And hopefully we'll have a nice turnout for the primary and the general.
Great. And Vice-Mayor Wu, I don't know if you can comment on this, how you think that the nonpartisan nature of local elections has impacted voter behavior.
I would like to hope that it would encourage more people to participate, not just because it's nonpartisan and not just for the independent voters. I think right now there is a pretty strong feeling within our electorate of how sick people are of partisanship and how sick people are of the kinds of things that are happening in DC or in Frankfurt. And so for me, if this is a move away from that sort of really toxic, unproductive partisanship, hopefully there will be people who maybe are disillusioned or don't even want to vote because they don't think their vote matters, or they're sick of their own party, or they're sick of the other party. Hopefully it'll encourage people to come out and not think about, I'm a Democrat, so I have to vote for Democrats because otherwise the Republicans will take over. More thinking about, do I like this particular person who's representing my district or representing my city? Do they represent my values? Will they do a good job? And really kind of look at it from an individual sort of basis. A really good example here is that our two-term mayor, Linda Gordon, is a registered Republican in a fairly blue city. And she has won two very strong elections in 2018 and 2022 because of the fact that there wasn't an R or a D next to their name. People got to judge her on who she presented herself as, or her own, voting record, or her, record of accomplishments, or her value system, all of that stuff. And I think that's a really, really great thing, that the council and the mayor may not be of the same party, but it doesn't really matter. We still get to kind of work together, and we just don't have that natural sort of antagonism that comes with being opposing parties.
May I ask a question? This is one of the questions in the chat. Is there any evidence that nonpartisan ballots really elsewhere really do get voters to learn more about the candidates? Or is that just an assumption?
That's a great question. I don't have any that sort of data. That is kind of an assumption, simply because otherwise, how do you know like who I am or why you should vote for me? But I would be interested to see if there was data either on the national or other levels on that.
Thank
Yep.
you.
And I can tell you just from visiting like Oklahoma City, and when they went nonpartisan, it turned out like most of their members were part of the Chamber of Commerce because they had the money to be able to run. And that was one of the negatives. And you have to make sure that that doesn't happen in your city as well. Not that you don't want the chamber involved, but you don't want to be able to buy your races. And so especially with that for Citizens United and some of the money that can be pumped in, that's dangerous. And then you have to worry because in judicial races, a lot of times people do not know their judges. They just pick a random name. So I think that it does bring the importance of the job that I have as clerk is to educate quite a bit. And so I'll do the best I can within my parameters to be able to do that, just as chair of the Board of Elections, making sure the information's out there, making sure that people understand what happens. And we kind of have a timeline. They said that we got to be careful to start doing it this early because we have a little bit amount of money. But as it gets closer, we're really going to make sure that we're educating the people and partnering with like the League of Women Voters and other places that we can hopefully explain to people. And to me, the only way that you're going to get educated voting population is to make them feel engaged. And the only way you can get engaged is to be out there in the community talking. We recently hired a new ambassador, voting and civic engagement ambassador, Milt Wagner, who I think has a lot of respect within the community. And we got a lot of young people who are getting engaged, and hopefully that'll be contagious.
A follow-up question to that is, are the early voting locations available to see now on your website?
Yes.
Thank you.
If I can add a little bit to what Clerk Yates was saying about the idea of that, a lot of the chamber folks kind of boosted or ran candidates. Money is certainly always a factor in local elections. We have found, at least in Lexington, that money has not been the deciding factor in many, many of our recent races. A lot of folks who have been outraised and outspent have won, myself included. In my race, of the 6 candidates, I think I was 5th in fundraising, and I came in 1st. Our mayor, in her 2 very large landslide victories, has been outspent and outraised in both elections. So thankfully, and this is probably different from community to community, thankfully, I think money isn't always the deciding factor. So for me, opening it up, being nonpartisan, will hopefully also encourage more candidates from more different backgrounds, not just people who have money or are backed by moneyed interests, just like regular people from the community who are willing to serve, independently.
Great. And just kind of a follow-up question to that is that, will candidates still be able to campaign under a party label, or how logistically does that tend to work?
Yes. A lot of times in judicial, well, in the judiciary races, that they cannot claim a party label or talk about their affiliation with a party, although there is some legislation right now in that I think out of the House that's wanting to change that. No, that you could still campaign. You have that right to be able to talk about your party affiliation, and there can even be party endorsements of candidates.
So when I was campaigning in 2022, one of the questions that I would get at the door, not all doors, but a lot of doors, a lot of times through a screen door, is they'll say, "Are you a Republican or a Democrat?" And my first answer is, "Well, it's a nonpartisan race." And then they'll say, "Yeah, but are you a Republican or a Democrat?" And I would say, "I'm a registered Democrat." And half the times the doors would slam close and I'd be done and move on to the next house. And the other half of the time, people are like, "Oh, thank God, we need another Democrat." So that mentality, even though Lexington has been nonpartisan for council for 50 years, that sort of mentality of like, I'm only going to vote for a Democrat or only a Republican still is going to be sort of there. But I have also had really great conversations with people who seemingly have different value sets or of the other party because we're talking about like real issues that affect them. They're talking about how people are speeding down their street or their trash pickup isn't consistent, things like that. It shouldn't matter, and it doesn't matter that I'm a Democrat or a Republican to help them with those kind of issues. So we've never had any prohibitions on saying whether we're a Democrat or Republican. For me, my own personal philosophy has always been to run 100% as a nonpartisan person. And from a strategic point of view in 2022, when we were writing out kind of our campaign platform, I kind of went through it, wrote a first draft, and then stripped it of anything that could be perceived as partisan language, just because I wanted to completely avoid that whole trap entirely. But that was just for me personally.
Interesting. Okay. And do you think that these changes in voting will give an advantage to a particular political party, or is the idea to remove any sort of advantage?
That's Go ahead.
I can, well, I mean, I was there during debates as a state senator. I mean, I was in the state senate 7 months ago, before being appointed here in October. That was the debate. It was whether or not changing this to nonpartisan is because Louisville had been a stronghold, a Democratic stronghold for a long time. There was actually some legislation proposed at the same time to make school board races partisan, which I think would be a nightmare. But that was because out in other areas there was a higher Republican registration, and at the same time they were making Louisville nonpartisan. So no, I think that there was some intention on there to make it to probably give part of the supermajority of both the House and the Senate at that time to try to get some advantage there. And I can't speak for all members. I think maybe for some. But I think that there's also some positive that can be done with it. So to me, as I wind up digesting it, that a few members' intentions shouldn't determine how well policy is. And so I thought as long as this is done correctly, and that's one of the reasons I'm in the position I'm in right now, because I know there have been some problems with the elections. I was worried about making sure we get the information out there, making sure we have access to voting, easier access to voting. So I think that regardless of what some members' intentions may have been, I think most members, they care about the good of the Commonwealth of Kentucky and they care about Louisville. And so I think that with what we've been given, the legislative draft, we can make it work.
Great. And Vice Mayor Wu or Maryellen Allen, do you have anything to add to that?
It's interesting for me to think about because in some ways, this is the first year that Louisville's kind of hitting it, and we've had it for 2 generations. So to kind of answer that question is a little bit difficult because I feel like in Lexington, we honestly don't even talk that much about whether or not we have a Republican or a Democratic mayor or a majority on council. That's just not the conversation we have anymore. It really is on sort of individuals. And that's my hope for Louisville as well, that, several cycles down the road or a generation down the road, that's not even a question that we ask. It's just are we electing the best people?
Great. So I'm going to ask one final question, and then I'm going to ask the group to put any questions you have for the panelists into the chat. And our league member, Leslie Marcelino, will be able to ask those questions for the panelists. But my last question is how should voters prepare for the upcoming election, not only in terms of educating themselves about the candidates, but also what to expect in terms of the voter registration deadline and the dates that are important for the upcoming primary election?
Please go on there and check at jeffersoncountyclerk.org. Go ahead and make sure that you're registered. If you're not registered, you need to do that before April 20th. But check your voter registration, make sure that your address is updated, and make a plan. A lot of times, if you don't have a plan to vote, it can sneak up on you. And so we have the early voting. We have 25 locations, the most ever. Remember, at the early voting, you can vote at any of them. And we're going to have a map on the website. So it's interactive. You can literally find which one's closest to me. So if you're coming from work, you're coming from church, you're coming from a friend's house, whatever it is, you could just whatever, make it as easy as you can. And then you want to make sure that you mark it May 19th is the Democratic primary, the Republican primary, and the independent primary. No matter how you're registered, that is your day to go and vote. And for a long time, that we could not participate into it if you were not a Democrat or Republican. So talk to your friends and your family and make sure that they're there to go. And we'll be mailing the postcards to all registered voters. So if you get it in the mail, you should have it, and it'll have your precinct on there, have your information. But if you think that's confusing and problematic, remember, you got the opportunity to vote early. And to me, I think that every year I have people who tell me, something snuck up on them. They weren't able to cast their ballot. They wish they could have. We're making sure that there's every opportunity available. And so make that plan and encourage someone else to vote as well.
Great. And we do also have a special guest who's joined us. The League of Women Voters of Lexington president, Liza Holland, is on the call, and she has great perspective on nonpartisan races in Lexington. And so I'm just going to give her the floor to let our participants know about her experience with nonpartisan elections in Lexington. So Liza, welcome, and we appreciate your comments.
Well, thank you so very much. And I'm sorry I was not able to join you earlier, but I am thrilled for you all that you are getting into nonpartisan elections in Louisville. In Lexington, my experience has been, and just to give you some background, I got into the league doing the candidate forums in Lexington for a very long time. And I have found that especially during those forums, that's what gives me hope for our democracy, because each of the candidates come to the nonpartisan forums with their genuine ideas, thoughts, approaches for how they want to move the city forward. Whereas as soon as you start to go up the ladder into state races, you start hearing the party rhetoric, right? And it's not necessarily what each individual thinks, it's what they've been told to say. And to me, that's the biggest value that I find in the nonpartisan elections. The second value to me is, as a lifelong independent, it makes me very excited I can vote for something in Kentucky in the primaries. And quite frankly, it is the largest growing constituency, even in a state that has completely closed primaries. So you have a lot of people who are disaffected with the party system that are just wanting to be, they're wanting to be on their own and make their decisions by the person as opposed to the party. And I think that that's a really great thing to inject into your local politics there.
Liza, thank you so much for that positive note. I appreciate that. And as Sandra said earlier, the Louisville League is hosting candidate forums for all of the contested primary elections for the Metro Council races. So we do encourage all the participants to attend those, and we will have recordings of those if you're not able to attend in person, because it sounds like the candidate forums are really one of the best ways that voters can hear and learn about the different candidates. Great. All right, Liza. Well, thank you so much. And I do want to give us some time for questions because this is a new way of voting. And I'm sure many participants have questions. So if you could just put your questions in the chat, then we can monitor them that way. And so, Leslie, do you have any questions that are coming out from the chat?
Yes. The first question is, will there be public service announcement from the county clerk's office or for somewhere reminding voters that they can't vote straight party line
Yes.
for Metro Council? There will be.
Yes, and we'll continue to do that. I know that originally when they did the early voting, my previous clerk, Bobby Hoskall, had went out on TV and explained that, and there's a precedent set. And so we'll do similar things to make sure that we explain as much as we can to the public within our resources, obviously. And then we're also going to be partner up and working with as many advocacy groups as we possibly can to be able to share that information. But yes, there'll be announcements and information continue to be put out.
This is a piece of information. Louisville did have nonpartisan ballots in the 1920s. They called them non-emblem. And they were found to discriminate against people who were less politically active. Fewer people voted. And there was an increase in participation when you went to the closed identified parties. Just a FYI piece of information. What are the most important points that the league and others should be telling others about this change? And most probably, Vice Mayor Wu, how do you connect with underrepresented communities?
Yeah, that's something I think about a lot with even just the policies that we try to put out in city government. It doesn't help if you have great services, great programs, if certain communities aren't getting them, particularly marginalized communities, particularly immigrant, refugee, and new American communities, because government has not always done a great job of communicating, of having materials and websites translated into other languages, of being culturally competent, and doing proactive outreach into these communities. So that's something I think about a lot, both as an elected official and as a candidate. There are a lot of folks in this country who are eligible to vote, who just aren't participating because we've never reached out to them. One of the best things I've ever heard when I was out door knocking 4 years ago, people told me, and not just new Americans, people told me, like, you're the only person that's ever knocked on my door in any election. And that's mind-blowing to me. And what that means is there are people out there waiting to be engaged, waiting to be activated, waiting to be encouraged to participate. And I don't think we can ever sit back and just say, oh, voter participation is really low among these groups for these reasons, and then just shrug our shoulders. I think it is our job, both as candidates, as elected officials, as the league, as anybody who's interested in democracy, to keep widening that net of making sure all these underrepresented and marginalized communities get a voice. But that takes a lot of work and resource and extra effort, right? For groups like the league or any other civic groups, you know who your base constituency is. You know how to do the outreach that you know how to do. To reach the people that you're not currently reaching, you have to do things differently. You have to put resources and intentionality out there to do it. And it's not easy, but it's well worth it, I think.
Deputy Mayor, on that, I really appreciate that note onto it. And I'll tell you, the one thing I came in as clerk, of course, it's only been, since October, but it was trying to make sure that there's some communities right now that are, unfortunately, with some of the intimidation of DOJ and ICE and other things. So we potentially reached out. Americana will be one of the voting locations that will have early voting locations, but we did something else, and I was trying to look at best practices, and it's not required into it, but we'll have sample ballots in Spanish early, so that sometimes that just it helps that kind of inclusiveness in there. We also are redoing our website. And so when it'll be ADA compliant, but it'll have in over 100 different languages. So that, and the idea is just to connect, and you don't realize how well received that will be until you do it. and simple is how I voted bans in Spanish into it, the way that they could help bring a community in. So I didn't realize how big of an effect that was going to be until we started this, and I'm excited about it because I think you're right. You've really got to take your time, sit down, lots of lunches and discussions, and I think that's how you bring people in who otherwise had felt left out.
If I can add one more thing to that too, I'm on the board of New Americans Initiative, which is a Kentucky-wide nonprofit. Our executive director is Nima Kulkarni, who is our first immigrant state representative based out of Louisville. Our entire mission is basically to get immigrants and refugees, to get them permanent status, and then to get them engaged with civics, with register to vote, with civic education, and eventually even helping people run for office in the future. So New Americans has partnered with the League before in outreach efforts and stuff. We'll continue to do so, but I think it's a really good resource because that is literally sort of our mission.
That's right. I work with Nima all the time. So, yeah.
Another question. Lexington also has 2 at-large council members. Is that correct?
We have 3. The vice mayor is a weird misnomer. It really should be called council president because I don't work for the mayor. I don't work for the administration. I'm not a deputy. I'm the head of council. So we have 3 at-large candidates. When you vote for at-large, you can vote for up to 3 candidates, and the person with the most votes is named vice mayor. So vice mayor is not something you run for. It's a little confusing. But yes, we have 3 at-larges.
And do you think that adds to the ability to be focused on the whole city and not just geographic council districts?
Yeah, that's how it's generally has broken down. We have 15 council members, 12 are divided by district, and 3 are at large. How every council member approaches their job is very different, but generally speaking, district council members do have a lot of focus on constituent issues specifically in their district, and at-larges generally have, a little bit of a step back and be able to look at big picture, larger policy items, which is how I'm focused.
Thank you. This is a reminder. Make sure Clerk Yates, I think you said this before, is make sure you go to the website before the election to make sure that to confirm that you are, excuse me, to confirm the sample ballot and that you're actually on the rolls to be able to vote.
Yeah, and now more than ever, right now, I mean, we know what's going on, and I mean, from education standpoint, Department of Justice, and right now the lawsuit against our Secretary of State, Michael Adams, is wanting to get voter information, and potentially we worry about politicizing nationalizing our elections. And so, of course, as the county clerk, I'll be fighting here. I actually have filed this afternoon a motion to intervene. So I'll be protecting. I'm actually the first clerk of the United States admitted to the Eastern District as well. So we're coming in fighting to protect that. But please pay attention as we get closer, because especially I'm looking at the women voters, legal women voters, in the event that some of this legislation that passes with the SAVE Act and some of the local House bills, there could be some major changes. I'll be fighting with everything I have here locally, but it is important that people are checking and making sure that things are correct.
This is on a somewhat different scope. Will DOJ or ICE folks be near voting sites? What does the law say about that?
We have no ability to remove them, but I can tell you that there will be no intimidation tolerated. I've worked closely with our sheriff. We're going to have sheriffs at every site. If someone decides to intimidate at the poll locations, I can tell you that they'll have a place at the county jail. If there was the federal government wishes to do so, which I don't want to speculate, but that's one of the reasons that we have decided to open up as many early voting locations as we have. We will make it easier for people. We want to make sure that every vote can be cast freely, fairly, and accurately, fear without intimidation. So just know that you have your local officials there. We got your back. We're looking out for you, and every eligible voter should feel safe to go to the polls.
On your website, Mr. Yates, Uh, do you have a way for a person to find out their specific elected officials from their district?
I'm sorry. Oh, the link to the voter information is
Yes.
yeah. So it's just a link to the voter information center on the website. That's where you can find your representative. So if you click on it, you go to jeffersoncountyclerk.org. On there, there's a little button for voter information, and you can go down there and it'll have all your voter information is right there, including a list of your representatives.
Great. Thank you very much.
And just know, I know the website is a little outdated. We're doing our best to update it as I've come in. We have already gone a contract with Granicus so that we're going to have a new website that will be very interactive, and it will actually work so that we kind of break down the barriers. So if you go to the clerk's website, it won't tell you, well, I'm sorry, we can't help you. Now go to the county attorney's website or go to the sheriff's website. So we're all in Metro government. We're all going to be operating after a Granicus platform. So as soon as they get that thing done, it's not quick, but hopefully in the next few months, that website will be up and rolling and should be a whole lot easier.
Oh, good. Great. On your website, are the candidates identified as Democrat or Republican?
No, the list of candidates, I think that obviously that it'll be listed as their elected position. And I know that during elections, we run in partisan primaries, then that's fine, nonpartisan primaries. But to me, the moment that you're elected and the race is over is the moment you become a public servant. And I think it's real important that people remember that. They realize that. And so whether or not you're a congressperson as a Democrat or Republican, if there's an issue, congressional issue, you reach out and contact them. If you're a U.S. Senator, you may completely disagree with some of their politics, but most of the issues you may be contacting them with won't be their legislative. It's on what you need for help. And so I've learned when I was in the Senate, I was in leadership as the whip as well. I've learned that one of the things you have to do is be able to reach across the aisle. As a citizen, you deserve to be served by the public official, regardless of the partisan. So, that I haven't gone and changed things up too much as far as the way that previous clerk host call had it. I think it made a lot of sense, and I'm doing my best to make sure that we continue to make sure people are informed. And then right now, if you have the new website coming into it, you'll have a new candidate program so that you'll be able to understand who's running. You'll understand the judges better. You'll have better perspective. But once you're an elected official, likely it'll just be you'll click the link to who's you're elected.
Thank you. Mr. Wu, after the election, do the candidates who lean Democrat or Republican usually vote in a identifiably partisan way?
The short answer is no. Yeah, what's really interesting, sometimes people will joke with me or we'll see an article talking about Democrats or Republicans falling in line behind their majority leader or their minority whip or whatever. And I always joke nobody falls in line behind me on anything. I am just one vote out of 15. I do have some leadership roles there, but it's not like one of those things where I, as the leader of council, gets to set the agenda and then everybody falls in line behind me. We had a week that was very interesting. We had two very contentious votes that went 8-7. One was about a zone change for a housing development, and the other was about a proposal for a new city hall. And it went 8-7, 8-7. And I looked at my colleagues and I tried to see how many of my colleagues voted exactly like me on both accounts. And it was 4 out of 15. So that goes to show you that we may be allies and voting together on one particular issue, and the very next day or the very next vote, we're voting differently on something else. So the other part too that I think is hard to necessarily peg somebody as a Democrat or a Republican is when we talk about things like housing, when we talk about, a noise ordinance, when we talk about our tree canopy, those are not generally easily put into a Republican or Democratic bucket. I think if you follow local electeds, you get a sense of like, oh, these couple of council members really care about the environment. These folks are much more pro development. These folks are much more pro public safety. So you kind of get a sense of what people's values are, and you can look at their voting records, but it is not easily divided up into parties. And I think that's great.
Yeah. Are early votes counted ahead of the election and posted as soon as the polls close?
No. And actually, there's statutes on that as well. In fact, it's kind of funny is when we did the special election, everybody else was calling me, telling me what the results were because we can't electronically send it. You have to go and pick up the tabulations and drive them back. And that's made to make sure there's no type of fraud or interference or hacking. But no, that now there are some states that do that if you vote early, they kind of take it off and they know, as it's going on, who hasn't voted yet. But no, it's all done at the same time.
But this question says, what does a voter do if their name is not at the poll roster?
If they go to vote and their name's not on the poll roster?
Yes, sir.
That's just one that we actually do this in our training. So the election officers they're taught to be able to call down and determine eligibility through the election center. And then if the person, the voter, is not happy with that termination, then they can always appeal it to the board. So so we're sitting around. There's a board of election that I'm a member of. I'm chair of the board of election. And so in the event that someone has to appeal it, they can call down and appeal that decision.
Thank you. That is the last question we have here.
Oh, wait, Leslie, there's one from Mary Bryan that asks, is there a role for the county clerk office to provide information regarding how voters can find out about the candidates?
Yeah, I think that there's always a role to try to educate, but we have to be very careful in this position that we cannot. I think besides being the clerk, I'm also chair of the board of election, and I want to make sure that you're not putting one person over another, one party over another. You want to make sure that people, more important than any of our individual positions, is the integrity of the elections, which undermines the importance of our democracy. And so as you're trying to educate about one candidate or another, you're kind of getting in some gray areas. How do you pick that information? Now, what I do think that can be done, and you've seen some other areas, and we're hoping to have some more interaction on the new website we'll have more bandwidth and less hacking that we've had unfortunately have undergone the past few years. The clerk's office is a little more, links and stuff that you could find information about them that they would want to post about themselves. But I think it becomes very dangerous for me to do it. Now, what they can always do is in the partisan election is call the party. They can always call the local party and look at the party websites and they can put the information however they want. But I think as the clerk's office and the chair of the board of elections, we have to be a little bit careful about crossing that line.
Well, and I do want to just put in a plug for the League of Women Voters is partnering with Our People, Our Vote, which is through the nonpartisan organization Common Ground, and they are creating a nonpartisan voter guide that will be available on their website, ourpeopleourvote.org, for the primary election. Now, for this round, it's just Jefferson County, but for the general election, the hope is to expand access to the voter guide to multiple counties in Kentucky. So we're very glad that that's happening in Jefferson County because of the nonpartisan election. So please check that out. It should be populated by the end of the month, and that's a great resource for voters, in addition to the candidate forums that the league is administering for this election cycle. Okay. All right. Well, I think we are getting close to time. I do want to give our panelists an opportunity for any closing statements. So please, the floor is open.
I just want to give a shout out to the League of Women Voters. From my very first time I've ever been in office, doing the debates, I was in my 20s coming to the Metro Council. But it's about, to me, I've always found it's partnerships with the nonprofits and things that really make government work. In the Senate, I got to chair the nonprofit caucus, and I watched that they do so much of the work that the government can't. So I appreciate that. And that was another example of while we're limited to our government roles, I do think it's so important to make sure you have community involvement, and the league does that. So thank you so much. Please continue to partner with us, because I think these relationships will help get people more and more educated. I'll do this as many times as you want to. I'm trying to, anybody will listen to us talk will do that. And thank you to my other panelists. And Maryellen Allen is a rock star. She's going to be retiring on us soon after many decades of service. And so we really appreciate her as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say one thing. As a one of my responsibilities here is to train election officers. And what happens when voters go to the polling location and they see their ballot for the first time, this happens all the times with judges, then they turn to the election officers and they're like, I don't know who any of these people are. And that is my biggest fear, is that's what's going to happen if voters aren't tracking this with these nonpartisan metro races. And of course, the election officers are trained. You can instruct a voter how to vote in terms of the machine equipment, but can't comment on anything. It also happens with public questions. So again, I appreciate the effort of any of these other organizations that are going to help voters sort through what their principles are and how to vote, because I do worry about that. I worry about our election officers. I can also say I've never been a policymaker, so I'm just usually behind the scenes trying to implement the laws that Frankfurt gives us here in Jefferson County. And as a voter in Jefferson County, I'm so reinvigorated by Mr. Wu's comments, because it felt like we just got handed this, and maybe not always the best intentions, but it's very encouraging to hear how well it's gone in Jefferson County. I'm just saying that as a voter.
Yeah, I want to second what Clerk Yates said about League of Women Voters. You all show up. You all have been everywhere. I've really enjoyed doing the forums with you all, and I think this organization is trusted in the community to kind of provide the information and that voter engagement. I think it's really important. To Mary Ellen's point about intentions versus impact, I'm a person that thinks about that a lot, and I'm trying to put aside intentions because I have some feelings about Frankfurt, which I will not share here. But for me, it's about the impact, right? So it's not just passing a piece of legislation. It's also how do we implement it? How do we go about it? How do we use it to our advantage in terms of voter engagement and getting people going? So just generally speaking, I'm super excited for Louisville to head down this road. I hope, that in however many years that it really entirely changes the mindset of both voters and candidates and elected officials on how you approach elections and democracy in general. So I'm really excited for you guys.
Well, thank you so much for those positive comments at the end, and many
Laura,
thanks. Oh,
can I interrupt?
yes.
There was a last question that came in. Could one or any or all of you explain provisional ballots? How they work, what happens?
I can take that one. So provisional ballots in federal races or federal elections, Kentucky does allow a voter to vote a provisional ballot. It'll just have those federal races. The board then meets the following day to decide whether to count them. There's, I should know these by heart, the reasons why you can get a provisional ballot in Kentucky. You aren't registered, or your registration can't be determined. You're voting because of a court order. All 4 election officers challenge your eligibility. So again, the most common reasons are that you're not registered or your registration status cannot be determined. So sometimes you'll look at a state like Ohio and they'll issue 40,000 provisional ballots. But because Kentucky allows fail-safe voting, which means if you show up at a polling location and you are at the, you're registered, but you're at the wrong polling location, I'm going to send you to your new polling location and you're going to update your voter registration after the election, but I'll give you a ballot for your new address. Because Kentucky allows that, and they've allowed it since 1995, our reasons for issuing provisional are very limited. So we always encourage voters, if they go to a polling location, even in a federal election, and they're not registered, they can always vote a provisional. And again, the board will decide the next day whether to count that. But if they have the time, can they go ahead down to the Board of Elections and have a hearing? Because if the board decides that, they had applied to register and somehow, there was administrative error and they didn't get on the books, the board could then say, yes, you're eligible to vote, and they would get a full ballot with all the state races and local races as well. So two options in a federal election. If you aren't registered, your registration status can't be determined. Again, you can always have a hearing in front of the County Board of Elections, and there's even a judge that is available on election day that if the voter gets an unfavorable ruling, they can appeal that to a judge. And then again, with the provisional, but it does just have federal races. And then again, you don't know till the next day. The board gets together at 9 following an election and will decide whether to count that ballot.
But to clarify, you get a provisional ballot with just federal races.
Correct.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Maryellen. You're such a wealth of information, so we appreciate your participation. All right. Well, I think that will conclude our panel discussion for tonight. Again, we hope to have a recording of this webinar on the League's website. And please, again, the most important thing you can do is share this information with your friends and family. Even the most informed of us in this community are not aware of these changes. So it's really up to all of us to make sure everyone is aware. And I really appreciate you all participating tonight, and many thanks again to our panelists for taking the time to educate and engage voters in our community. Thank you so much and have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.